Hi there! Today's video is going to be about how I was able to buy a condo at 25 years old. Let's dive right in. Hi, so if you're new here, my name is Elise. I am living in Toronto, Canada, and today I wanted to share with you exactly how I was able to buy my condo at 25 years old. I segmented this video in a few sections, so if you want to jump around, if you're interested in a specific part of the buying process, you can go there. I have the timestamps in the description box below. I wanted to start with why I even wanted to buy a property. To rewind back to 2020, I was living back at my parents' house. Pandemic just hit. I was in the search of my first full-time job after graduating university. I got quite a large inheritance from my grandparents, and they really wanted me to put that money into real estate. So that's really the only reason why I even started considering looking into the housing market. Otherwise, I think I was a few years away from even being at a point where I can consider buying a house. They really fast-tracked the process for me, and I have heard that getting first property is the hardest, and then once you're in, the process gets a bit easier. Big thank you to my grandparents for helping me out and really, cutting my time in half when it comes to getting into real estate. So I had the plan of moving to Toronto after I graduated university. I grew up mainly in Vancouver, Canada, which is on the west coast, and Toronto is on the east coast above New York. So I had wanted to move across the country and kind of start my career in Toronto, and my mom suggested, oh, why don't you look into actually buying a place so that you can pay a mortgage instead of rent. The main calculation you really need to be aware of is how much would rent be if you were renting versus if you have the funds to put down a down payment and actually buy a place. How much would your monthly mortgage cost be? And if the mortgage is less than what you would be paying for rent, financially it would make sense for you to do that. So I was open to paying essentially either the same amount as I would be in rent or less. That was kind of the game plan. My mindset back then, like when I first started looking, wasn't really in a rush. Like at the time, the housing market was really hot because the interest rates were super low. I think historically low at that time. My mom actually really pushed me to find a place for when I moved to Toronto. So that's kind of why I got into this whole housing market in the first place. I think growing up, I knew that real estate was a very stable investment in the sense that as long as you're buying at a location that is desired, it's almost guaranteed that you would make money from it. I felt pretty confident in that. I wasn't too concerned about essentially putting all my eggs in one basket and spending all the money I had saved in this one property. Moving on to the actual buying process, the first thing you need to do is to find a real estate agent. I luckily found my real estate agent through a friend. She recommended her parents' real estate agent to me, who knew the area really well, really understood the Toronto housing market, how fast everything moves, and once I connected with her, I essentially stuck with her and trusted her judgment and opinion and suggestions on which neighborhoods I should be looking at, the price range. But once you find your agent, that is the person that you should trust, because one thing that I found really confusing in the beginning was not knowing which parties involved in this whole home buying journey are on my side, in the sense that they have my best interest at heart. Because you have your real estate agent, the sellers have a real estate agent, bank or a lender for whoever you're getting your mortgage from, lawyer who gets involved. So with all these people involved, I was like, who's actually on my side versus who is just in it to get their chunk of the money, and then, once the sale is done, they don't really care. Whoever you go with for your real estate agent, you should really trust them, because they are the ones who should be on your side when it comes to this whole process. shop around a little. If you have friends who have gone through this, a family, and they can refer you to their agent, that's probably the best way to go. Or, you can always do a Google search online, meet with 3 or 4 realtors and see who you click with best, who has the knowledge that you're looking for. But you should really stick with one real estate agent because that motivates them to really find the right place for you. And with multiple realtors, then they have less incentive to find that perfect unit for you. So the actual house hunting process, how long was it? Did the whole process look like? Let's dive right in. So I was looking at studios and 1-bedrooms, but I actually found out that within my price range, I was really only going to be able to look at studios, which was okay with me. I knew this was going to be like a starter spot just to kind of plant the seed, like I was saying earlier, in getting into the housing market, not buying my forever home for my first place. So I was okay with a space that was maybe a bit smaller than I would have liked. As long as the location was really good, I was happy with that. The house hunting process for me really seriously started browsing in spring of 2021, and in my head I had wanted to move to Toronto at some point that year. I gave myself, a good 6 to 9 months to look. For my situation, I actually was not in Toronto. I was living at home still in Vancouver. I really relied on my realtor to send over listings that she felt was a good fit. I had made sure to let her know kind of like what my checklist of things I was looking for were and what the nice to haves were. So for me, my checklist was I would have liked a south-facing unit because that's the one that gets the most direct sunlight throughout the year. And I knew that moving to Toronto with the winters being colder, I definitely wanted as much sun as possible. I would have loved a balcony. I wanted a lot of windows and just light into the space. I wanted a concierge for the front desk so that I knew the building was safe and secure. And when it comes to nice to haves, I would have loved I've loved for it to be on a higher floor. I knew I wanted to be in a high rise. I knew there would be a lot of street noise and people, so I would have loved to have been in a higher floor. And I would have loved a view because I don't know about you, but I'm definitely a city girl. I always dreamed about living in an apartment where I can look out my window and see the city skyline and just be inspired by the city. So that's definitely something I wanted. So for the actual hunting process, if you've ever looked into the housing market, if you live in a pretty bustling city, listings usually go pretty quick. So I was looking at the time in Toronto, listings would go up and be gone in about a week. Like, it was pretty fast because the interest rate was so low at the time. A lot of people were looking to buy. So I decided that I would fly out to Toronto for a week and see a few listings in person with my real estate agent, get a better feel of the neighborhoods and the properties compared to, just seeing photos online, and feel more solid if I did that. We were only able to slot in 2 listings. So the first one we saw, honestly thinking back, if I have footage, I will insert it here. I think the main thing that really deterred me from this spot was that there was zero view, very limited light, because there was one full wall that was pretty much all window, but it faced directly to another building, and the other building was super, super close. So it almost looked like I just had a green screen of like a brick of like another building's exterior wall against my window, and I couldn't see anything. It made it feel a bit like a prison cell, but everything else about the unit I really loved. So we were like, okay, let's just give a lowball offer and see what happens. Put in a lowball offer, they rejected it. They obviously got a better offer, and a few days later it was gone. So I wasn't really that upset because I wasn't in love with the unit, but that is how the first listing went. And then the second unit we saw is actually in the same building I ended up purchasing in, but a different unit, and I really hated that unit. The floor layout was really weird. It was like a weird triangle layout that made the space seem really small. Couldn't envision myself putting a queen bed in there and have enough space to walk around comfortably without it being awkward. So I was like, no, I don't like this unit at all. So yeah, so that was it. And then it made seem like, oh, maybe I was upset or that I would have wanted one of those 2 units to work out. But honestly, at the time in my head, I was like, I'm in no rush to buy. Like, this is my first place. I want to do it right. If anything, I can always move to Toronto, rent a spot for a few months, and find a place while I am living here. So I wasn't really too upset about the fact that those 2 units didn't really work out. That was in the summer of 2021. A couple days later, my realtor actually messaged me after I had left Toronto already and showed me a video of another unit that opened up in the same building, which ended up being the unit I bought. So she showed me the video. It essentially checked everything off my list. It was south-facing. It's on a high floor. There's a view. I can like see the CN Tower from my window. There's a concierge, and a bonus is that the unit actually came furnished. Furniture itself was not necessarily my style, but if you remember back in like the height of COVID, there was a lot of supply shortages. A lot of that included furniture. If I ordered a bed, and it would have taken a long time for it to get here. So I'm glad I didn't have that headache to sort out if I bought this unit. After I saw the initial video that my realtor took, I was like, okay, this place looks pretty good. I want to make sure that I like it. So I got one of my best friends who lived in Toronto, go with the realtor to the space, take a super thorough video of the entire space as if, you know, she was buying it herself. I wanted to see like every nook and cranny, all the cracks, everything. Everything looked really good. So the only thing was that I had to up my price. In the beginning, I was looking between 300 to 400K price range, but after we narrowed down the neighborhoods I was looking in Toronto, which was mainly these neighborhoods, it was really unlikely I was going to find something. My realtor suggested for us to be open to paying a little bit more. I think this unit, the listing price was already above 400K. She suggested we actually offer more than the listing price so that we have a better chance of being accepted. I trusted her judgment. I was like, okay, let's do it. Put the offer in, and luckily they accepted. So once they initially say yes, you have a certain amount of time to put in essentially your good faith money, which is a certain amount of the listing price, so that they know you're committed to actually purchasing. For me, that was, I think, 30K that I had to give right up front. And then once I sent them that, we signed all of the contracts, and essentially the place is ready for me to buy. So yeah, that's how I found my place. Luckily, I didn't experience too much of bidding wars. I have heard horror stories where people will bid, and then there's a counter offer, and then the price just keeps going higher and higher, and there's, you know, only a certain amount you're willing to go before you're like, okay, it's not worth it. I luckily didn't experience too much of that. The only thing is the unit did end up being a bit more expensive, definitely on the highest end of what I was willing to go. I purchased my unit $465,000. That was the closing deal cost. And I joke that I live in a box to all of my friends because my entire unit, including the balcony, is around 300 square feet. So really small. I essentially just walk around in a circle around my kitchen island every day. But now that I've been in the space for a year, I've really tried to make it my own. You'll be able to see how I decorated the space and made it as functional as I could with the limited amount of space I have. Let's get into the financing and how all of that works. The main thing I was most stressed about during this whole time was the pre-approval. So you need something called a mortgage pre-approval, which essentially means that there's a bank or a lender out there who is willing to give you a certain amount of money so that once you do find a unit you want to buy, you already know, like, great, I am able to lend this amount of money, therefore I can afford this unit, therefore I am good to go in buying it. From the bank side, main thing they look at for how much they're willing to give you for your mortgage is almost solely based on your salary. For me at the time, I really was not making that much income. I was making around $55,000 a year. So my borrowing power was really low. So because of that, I had to put down quite a sizable amount of down payment, which is the amount of money you give up front after everything is signed. You pay your down payment, and then whatever amount you owe left over from the price of the property, you lend that through a mortgage. Luckily, like I was saying, I got into the market at a pretty great time where the interest rate was really low, and I went with the bank I already bank with, so that process was really easy. I shop around a little bit to see what other mortgage rates I could get, and actually this is a good tip, which is that I had gone to another bank who had like a promotional deal for mortgages, and I got a lower rate with them than my current bank. But I took it back to my current bank saying, hey, this other bank is willing to, give me this interest rate, which is lower than what you're offering. Are you able to match it? And they ended up matching it. Definitely keep that in mind when you are looking for a mortgage lender, that if you want to make it easy and just stay with the bank you already bank with and they have a mortgage solution, if you take, another competing offer, they might be willing to lower the interest rate for you. That's the pre-approval process. From there, once you have your unit picked out and contracts are signed saying like, yes, I'm going to buy this unit from you, your realtor's job is kind of done, right? Because your realtor is there to help you find places you're interested in, will look at them with you, let you know like what you should consider, given your price range and what is and isn't reasonable. And then once the final unit is found and finalized, their piece of the home buying journey with you is kind of done. And then from there on, all of the legality, documentation, and process then carried forward with your bank or your mortgage lender and a lawyer. This is another thing I was unclear on exactly who I needed besides a real estate agent to do this whole home buying process. It's really three key people. There's your realtor, there's your lawyer, and then your mortgage lender, which in most cases is a bank. So those are the three people you will need to be in touch with. Once you have a place, your realtor's job is done. From there, it's really your lawyer and your mortgage lender that does everything else. So they will take care of the paperwork. They will do due diligence on the property, make sure the land transfer is probably put under your title, and legally everything is legit and everything is done properly. I found my lawyer actually through my realtor. She recommended this lawyer that she really trusts, that she's worked with other clients on, so I just used that lawyer that she gave me. This process is all very standard, so it's not like you're gonna find a really big price difference whether you go with A lawyer versus B lawyer. I would say put aside around $10,000 for lawyer fees. At least that's what I did, and that covered everything. And then for the mortgage, that's something you will pay month over month for, the next 30 years, however long the mortgage is that you figured out with your bank. I think the most stressful part of this entire thing is once you have a place that you want to buy, the turnaround of getting the good faith money in and signing the final contract is really tight. Usually they'll only give 24 to 48 hours to do all of that, so make sure you have the cash on hand, because that money you do have to pay immediately. However much that good faith deposit is, plus your lawyer fees, that's what you need to give upfront, plus the down payment. So the down payment comes a bit later. There will be a date that you and the seller agreed upon of when the down payment gets transferred over. So that's the lump sum you give upfront, and then the rest is on a mortgage with your bank. That's the whole finance side of things. I hope I explained it well. From there, what you pay every month or every 2 weeks, whatever the cadence you set up is, essentially replaces the rent that you would have paid if you were renting a place. But the difference is, if you're renting, you're really just throwing that money away, versus if you're paying a mortgage, you're paying to essentially buy the unit that you live in. I hope that was useful for any first-time home buyers. I know for me it was a very confusing process and I had to do a lot of the research myself. If I have any resources, I will link them down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this video. I will see you